Sometimes it feels like we're going to be stuck in this place forever, in this dark place. When we're experiencing deep negative emotions, at least in that moment, it's like an eternity of hell. Like there is no escape, and we can go out into the world and try and live our lives with this great burden on our shoulders at all times. But it doesn't really work, because the quality of our life is always limited by us. And so if we are deeply suffering, then the whole world will be colored in deep suffering. We simply will not have the energy to live. And if caught in this deeply negative state long enough, we do lose the will to live. Every person who has ever committed suicide or done horrendous things in this world have all traveled the same path. It is not a unique journey. Even for me, it seemed like it was impossible that anyone else could have possibly experienced what I was experiencing. And one day, I read a book by Eckhart Tolle called A New Earth, where I realized that what I was experiencing might not only not be unique, but that many other people have had similar experiences, and there was possibly a way out. It is only until we lose hope does the journey really end. Because so long as we survive another day, so long as we keep moving forward, then we can never lose. I like to say sometimes, 90% of the battle is just not killing yourself. And this battle that I talk about is the battle to live a life full of joy and love and peace when we are so deeply stuck in negativity. Sometimes all we need is the desire to make things better. That alone can carry us into the light. And sometimes it may not feel like it, but you have the power to overcome any situation, any difficulty. It is only our own minds, the limitations we place upon ourselves, that cause us great trouble. Whatever you believe to be true will be true for you. But it doesn't always matter so much whether or not it is the actual truth. It's not always about the truth. Sometimes it's about what you choose to focus on. Are there great evil things that happen in the world? Yes. Do you need to know that 100 people died in a warehouse fire in China? No, you do not. There's absolutely no reason for us to know this information. And yet every day, without fail, the news is flooded with negative stories from around the world. And yet if we had never known about them, it would have made no difference to our life. But by knowing about them and focusing our attention on them, getting angry, getting sad, what does it do but make us feel more negative? It doesn't mean we ignore bad things, it just means that we don't allow our energy and our focus to be stolen all the time. Because negative ideas, negative stories, negative things that happen, they hijack our instincts, our biology. They tap into our primal, fear-based drives. That is how they steal our energy, by taking control of our attention. And so in our own lives, when bad things happen, we can be driven to focus on these negative things for years. I've met people who are still dealing with the same problem that was over a decade plus ago. But for them, they would replay the same negative story over and over and over, ruminating on only what is negative, how they were hurt, how the other person was such a bad person. So in a way, it didn't end 10 years ago, because they were still living in that situation. So every day re-traumatizing themselves, living the same moment for eternity. You see how we trap ourselves in hell? Because hell is a prison of the mind. When something happens, there is no rule book that says you need to think about it again. The people who are happiest in this life experience in the present moment. They move on from the past, and they don't think about the future all that much. Of course, there is great utility in reflecting on the past and planning for the future. But if you do not primarily live your life in the present moment, then we can get stuck in this hell. Because the mind, its whole game, is to use the past and the future, and even the present, to judge the world, to judge the environment, to judge other people, and to contrast our personal identity with the world around us. And so if you are not where you want to be, then you're upset and you're angry. And if you have what you don't want, then you are suffering. If something bad happens, the mind often won't let it go. So rather than just a bad thing happening once, we take the bad thing along with us and carry it throughout our lives, poisoning ourselves day by day until eventually all the energy that we have is drained from us. And we fall into a deep depression, deep states of negativity and suffering, until we finally lose the will to live at all. But you see, the path to hell is very clear. But until we've traveled that path, we often don't know. We don't know why we've come to this place and how we got here. But religion discovered this thousands of years ago. But our modern mind doesn't really resonate with that message. And one of my superpowers, let's say, is to translate these ancient ideas into modern normal people speak. All wrong action leads to hell, and all right action leads to heaven. But what is hell? And what is wrong action? And what is right action? And what is heaven? Well, we all have this thing within us called life, a force that is energy. This, of course, is self-evident because if we didn't have a life force within us, we wouldn't be alive. And so our mind is a tool that directs the flow of energy. It directs our life. And so the entire quality of our life is determined precisely by where we focus our attention. So the moment you begin reflecting on your thoughts, on the way you speak to yourself, on your behaviors, you will have no question whatsoever why your life is the way it is. Because life is happening from us and through us. So everything that we experience is a reflection of our own inner world. All the people we know, our relationships, the way we communicate, our experiences, our job, there is not one thing that is not a reflection of us. And so if we are in hell, that means that we did something to get us into this situation. And most people will convince themselves that they are innocent and that something else is to blame, and they give their power to a force outside of themselves. And often there is truth to this, because a lot of the times it is the trauma we experience as a child growing up that leads us to engage in self-destructive behavior or negative ways of thinking or having low self-esteem or getting ourselves into trouble. It's really not about what is fair. It is about dealing with what is in front of us. But until we claim our power and responsibility over our lives, we can never change and we can never heal. Because out of all the things in the world, the one thing you do have control over is your own mind. And that is the only thing that matters. And so every action has a certain tone to it, whether negative, positive, or neutral. Whether something is negative, positive, or neutral, wrong action, right action, is directly proportionate to its relationship to energy. Because energy is the fundamental resource of all existence. It is the essence of value. And so wrong action is based from how much energy or how much value is lost. The more energy lost, the worse the action is. And so to all right action is action that provides more energy in the long term. And how good the action is determined by how much energy is gained or how much value. And so there are two forms of energy. There is physical energy and there is consciousness. Physical energy is energy like our blood, our oxygen, our physical resources. Which is why, for instance, for men, semen retention is one of the most powerful tools for spiritual growth or for growth in general. Because it is our creative power manifested in form. But consciousness is the same energy, but in its formless, transcendent state, beyond all the limitations of space and time. It is the ultimate energy. But in some way, these two energies, which are the same thing fundamentally, they are directed by our attention from our mind. And so whatever we send our attention toward, that is what we give our creative power toward. Because energy is the force of life, it is the force of creation. And so the more we send our life to negativity, which ultimately means wasting it, to behaviors and thoughts that do nothing but drain our energy, step by step, slowly, and sometimes not so slowly, we find ourselves in hell. Because where life is not, death takes its place. And so the more life leaves our body, death begins to fill that space. And the balance between life and death becomes more and more imbalanced. And so to the degree in which we suffer is directly proportionate to this balance of life and death within us. Energy and entropy. The more we are aligned with death, the more we experience all the pain and suffering that comes along with it. We feel more lethargic. We have no motivation, no inspiration, not even a desire to live sometimes. But when we become aligned with life, we are inspired and motivated and excited to be alive. We feel more joy and more peace and are happy. And so it might become more clear now that you see the difference between heaven and hell. Hell is nothing but a state of deep suffering, and heaven is a state of deep joy. Two polarities. This force of life radiates joy and it radiates peace. And so the more of it we have with us, the more we experience that. And the less of it we have within us, the more we experience its absence. And where our energy goes is directly determined by where our attention is focused. And so if we have found ourselves in hell, it is for no other reason than because we have been giving our energy to that which steals it and wastes it. And the more we take control of our attention, of our mind, we can take ourselves from hell up to heaven. But this takes awareness. And so step by step we become more and more aware of where our energy is going. And with that awareness, you can catch yourself and say, I'm not going to give my attention to this negativity, because you come to understand the negative effects it has on you. It keeps you from peace and it keeps you from joy. If you really pay attention and put your hand on a hot stove, you cannot keep it on the hot stove without taking it off. The only reason that we do this in our own life with self-destructive behavior and unhelpful thoughts and unhelpful beliefs and attitudes is because we are completely unaware to the hell it is creating for ourselves. So pay attention to how you feel. That is how you know whether an action was right or wrong. Because the better you feel, the more life that was created. And the more negative that you feel, the more life was taken. We can spend our whole lives ignoring these feelings and not being aware of our thoughts, living unconsciously and engaging in unconscious behavior. And that is how we find ourselves in hell without realizing it.